Dawn breaks over the ancient monoliths of Stonehenge, casting long shadows across the dewy grass of Salisbury Plain. For 5,000 years, these massive stones have stood in silent vigil, their purpose debated by generations of archaeologists, historians, and mystics. But on a crisp autumn morning in 2023, something unprecedented occurred. An artificial intelligence system analyzing decades of archaeological data, astronomical alignments, and ground-penetrating radar scans made a discovery that has sent shockwaves through the scientific community. The system started flagging anomalies we'd completely overlooked, says Dr. Noah Yardley, lead archaeologist at the Cambridge Institute for Computational Archaeology. At first, we thought it was a processing error. The patterns seemed too precise, too intentional to have been missed for centuries. But the evidence kept mounting until we couldn't ignore the implications. What the AI discovered wasn't just another theory about Stonehenge's purpose. It revealed something far more profound, a sophisticated mathematical countdown encoded in the positioning of the stones, a timer set by our ancestors that appears to be approaching its conclusion. The story begins in 2021 when the Stonehenge Digital Mapping Project embarked on the most comprehensive analysis of the monument ever attempted. Using a combination of LiDAR, ground-penetrating radar, and magnetometry, researchers generated terabytes of data, revealing previously undetected features beneath and around the stone circle. Dr. Grace Vellum, a computational archaeoastronomer with dual appointments at Oxford and MIT, proposed using a machine learning approach to analyze this mountain of information. Traditional archaeology relies heavily on human intuition and expertise, explains Dr. Vellum, adjusting her glasses as she pulls up complex visualizations on her laboratory monitors. But humans have cognitive limitations. We see patterns where none exist, and miss patterns that are too subtle or complex. I wanted to see what patterns might emerge if we removed human bias from the equation. The research team developed ARCHAIA, Archaeological Historical Artificial Intelligence Analyst, a specialized neural network designed to detect patterns across multiple archaeological datasets. What made ARCHAIA unique was its training on a diverse corpus of ancient mathematical systems from civilizations worldwide: Babylonian, Egyptian, Mayan, Chinese, and more. This allowed it to recognize numerical and astronomical patterns that might be invisible to researchers trained primarily in European traditions. For 18 months, ARCHAIA processed data without remarkable results. The system identified several previously documented alignments with solar and lunar positions, correlations with other Neolithic monuments, and a few minor anomalies that quickly proved unremarkable upon investigation. Then, on September 23, 2023, the autumn equinox, everything changed. The system flagged an urgent anomaly at 3:17 a.m., recalls Terence Walsh, the graduate student monitoring the overnight data processing. I almost dismissed it as another false positive, but something about the confidence interval caught my attention. ARCHAIA was calculating a 99.97% probability of intentional design, numbers we'd never seen before. What ARCHAIA had discovered was a complex numerical pattern embedded in multiple aspects of Stonehenge's design. The precise positioning of the stones, the angles between specific pairs of megaliths, the relationship between the Aubrey holes, a ring of 56 pits surrounding the monument, and newly detected subsurface features. These elements, when analyzed collectively, revealed something extraordinary: a mathematical sequence that appeared to track astronomical cycles with astonishing precision. Most startlingly, the pattern wasn't static. It was dynamic, a countdown of sorts, measuring the progression of specific celestial cycles against one another. And according to ARCHAIA's calculations, this countdown was approaching a significant threshold. We spent weeks trying to disprove it, Dr. Yardley explains, running his hand through his salt and pepper hair. Science advances through attempted falsification, not confirmation bias. But every test we ran, every alternative explanation we explored, only strengthened the original finding. The question that launched the next phase of investigation wasn't just what this countdown might signify, but how Neolithic humans, supposedly primitive by modern standards, could have possessed the mathematical sophistication to create such a complex calculation system. And more urgently, what happens when the countdown reaches zero? The discovery prompted the formation of the Stonehenge Countdown Initiative, SCI, an international multidisciplinary team tasked with decoding the full meaning of the pattern. Experts in archaeoastronomy, mathematics, ancient languages, cultural anthropology, and computational archaeology convened at a hastily established research center near Amesbury, just 2 miles from the monument itself. What we're dealing with isn't just another astronomical alignment, explains Dr. Haruki Tanaka, a mathematical physicist from Kyoto University who joined the initiative. The builders created what we would now recognize as an algorithm, a set of mathematical instructions that tracks the intersection of multiple astronomical cycles to identify specific moments in time. The fundamental components of this algorithm include: first, the positioning of the sarsen stones, the largest stones in the monument, relative to specific stars in the Orion constellation. Rather than simply aligning with these stars, the stones track their gradual movement due to precession, the 25,920-year wobble in Earth's axis that slowly changes the apparent position of stars. Second, the 56 Aubrey holes encode lunar cycle information. Archaeologists had previously theorized these might represent a lunar calendar, but ARCHAIA detected a more sophisticated calculation that accounts for subtle variations in lunar orbit that only become apparent over centuries. Third, a series of buried markers detected by ground-penetrating radar-form mathematical ratios that track the relationship between solar and lunar cycles with remarkable precision. Individually, each element seemed to have its own purpose, notes Dr. Vellum, but ARCHAIA showed us they function together as components of a unified calculation system, like a prehistoric computer built of stone and earth instead of silicon. The most perplexing aspect was the countdown itself. By correlating the monument's measurements with astronomical cycles, ARCHAIA calculated that the system tracks toward a specific alignment set to occur on June 21, 2024, the summer solstice. We initially hypothesized this might be a coincidence, says Dr. Yardley, but the mathematical precision is extraordinary. The probability of such an elaborate system accidentally pointing to this specific date is infinitesimally small. As the team delved deeper, they discovered that Stonehenge wasn't working in isolation. The monument appears to be part of a network of Neolithic sites across Britain and parts of Europe. ARCHAIA identified mathematical relationships between Stonehenge and monuments like Avebury, Newgrange in Ireland, and Carnac in France. These relationships couldn't be detected through conventional archaeological methods because they relied on higher-dimensional mathematics, concepts typically associated with advanced geometry and theoretical physics rather than Stone Age cultures. It's as if these monuments form nodes in a prehistoric mathematical network, explains Dr. Elena Rodriguez, a computational topologist who joined the team. They're geographical coordinates in a vast calculation that spans thousands of square miles. This discovery raised the stakes considerably. If multiple monuments across Europe were components in a single vast calculation system, the level of coordination and mathematical sophistication implied was far beyond conventional understanding of Neolithic capabilities. Further complications emerged when the team began analyzing soil samples from around the monument. Dr. Marcus Chen, a geochemist, identified unusual isotope concentrations in specific locations predicted by ARCHAIA's model. These chemical signatures shouldn't be there naturally, he explains. They suggest deliberate placement of materials with specific properties at precise locations. Another layer of information in this complex system. As winter turned to spring, the investigation took an unexpected turn when ARCHAIA began correlating its findings with ancient myths and folklore. The AI identified striking parallels between the mathematical patterns at Stonehenge and motifs in Indo-European mythology, particularly stories dealing with cyclical time, cosmic renewal, and celestial catastrophes. Dr. Sophia Khoury, a comparative mythologist, initially dismissed these connections as coincidental until ARCHAIA demonstrated statistical correlations far exceeding random chance. What we're seeing is a confluence between mathematical astronomy and mythic narratives, she explains. The same numerical patterns encoded in Stonehenge appear in the structure of ancient myths from Ireland to India, stories about cosmic cycles, celestial gods, and world renewal. This mythological dimension added another layer of mystery. Were these stories metaphorical descriptions of actual astronomical events that the monument was designed to predict? Or were both the myths and monument expressing some deeper understanding of cosmic patterns? With the summer solstice of 2024 approaching, the team faced mounting pressure to decipher the full meaning of the countdown. Public interest in the discovery had exploded, with news outlets worldwide covering the story and visitors flocking to Stonehenge in unprecedented numbers. "We've had to enhance security at the site," notes Eleanor Hughes, English Heritage's site manager. "Everyone wants to see this 5,000-year-old countdown timer for themselves, even though the mathematical relationships aren't visible to the naked eye." Meanwhile, fringe theories flourished online, ranging from alien intervention to doomsday predictions. The team worked diligently to counteract misinformation while continuing their research. The most frustrating aspect is that we know the system is counting toward something, but we still don't fully understand what, Dr. Yardley admits. "It's like finding an elaborate alarm clock without knowing what it's meant to wake us up for." A breakthrough came in April 2024 when ARCHAIA completed a simulation of celestial movements based on the Stonehenge algorithm. The results indicated that the summer solstice of 2024 would feature an unusual astronomical configuration, a specific arrangement of planets, the Sun, and certain stars that occurs only once every 12,960 years, half a precession cycle. "What makes this configuration significant," explains Dr. Tanaka, "is that it creates a unique gravitational signature. It's subtle, nothing that would cause any noticeable effects on Earth, but it's mathematically distinct and precisely calculable." The question that haunted the research team: how could Neolithic humans possibly have calculated such a complex astronomical configuration without advanced mathematics, telescopes, or computers? And why would they invest enormous resources to track it? As the solstice approached, tensions within the team mounted. Some researchers argued they were overinterpreting the data, seeing complexity where simpler explanations might suffice. Others became convinced they were on the verge of revolutionizing our understanding of prehistoric human capabilities. "Science progresses through disagreement," Dr. Vellum observes. "The heated debates we're having are exactly how we refine our understanding. But what makes this case unusual is the deadline. Unlike most archaeological mysteries where time is relatively unlimited, we're racing toward a specific date that might provide crucial evidence, one way or the other." In early June 2024, just weeks before the solstice, the investigation took another unexpected turn. While analyzing minute variations in the monument stones, ARCHAIA detected evidence of deliberate acoustic properties. Specific stones appeared to be positioned and shaped to produce particular resonant frequencies when struck or when wind passed through the monument at certain velocities. Dr. Akiko Miyazaki, an archaeoacoustician, conducted field tests that confirmed these properties. The stones create infrasound frequencies below human hearing that nonetheless affect the human body and brain, she explains. On specific astronomical alignments, the wind patterns around the monument change, activating these acoustic properties. This discovery suggested the monument might function not only as a calculator but also as a sensory experience, creating specific physical and potentially neurological effects on people present during key astronomical events. As the solstice approached, a final piece of the puzzle emerged from an unexpected source. A previously undeciphered Proto-Indo-European text fragment, discovered decades earlier in a peat bog near Avebury but never successfully translated, was fed into ARCHAIA's linguistic analysis module. The system identified parallels between the text structure and the mathematical patterns at Stonehenge, enabling a partial translation. The fragment appeared to describe a celestial event occurring at the end of a great cycle, a moment when the sky will complete its turn and new understanding dawns in the minds of those who stand between the stones. With this textual evidence adding to the mounting data, the research team prepared for the approaching solstice with a mixture of scientific rigor and undeniable anticipation. Whatever the countdown was measuring, they would soon witness its culmination. June 21, 2024, arrived with clear skies over Salisbury Plain, ideal conditions for the astronomical observations planned by the research team. Instruments had been carefully positioned around Stonehenge, including seismographs, magnetometers, spectroscopes, and an array of custom sensors designed to detect subtle environmental changes. We've prepared for every conceivable measurement, Dr. Tanaka explains as technicians calibrate equipment in the pre-dawn light. Whatever happens or doesn't happen, we'll have the most comprehensive dataset ever collected at this monument during a solstice alignment. Thousands of visitors gathered at a respectful distance, held back by temporary barriers and security personnel. Media outlets from around the world broadcast live from the scene, their commentators struggling to explain the complex science behind the countdown theory to general audiences. As the sun rose, Dr. Vellum monitored real-time data flowing from the instruments. Initially, everything proceeded as expected for a normal summer solstice, she recalls. The sun aligned with the heel stone as it has for millennia, creating the famous effect where light streams into the center of the monument. Nothing unusual in that. But at precisely 4:52 a.m., the moment ARCHAIA had calculated as the exact alignment point, instruments around the site began registering anomalous readings. First came the gravitational measurements, says Dr. Yardley. Our gravimeters detected minute fluctuations, changes so subtle they registered just above our instrument's error margins. Then the magnetometers picked up unusual electromagnetic activity centered on specific stones within the monument. What followed defied easy explanation. For approximately 17 minutes, instruments recorded a series of phenomena that, individually, might be dismissed as measurement errors or natural anomalies. Collectively, they painted a picture of something extraordinary occurring. The acoustic properties previously identified became active, with infrasound measurements showing standing waves forming between specific stones. Localized electromagnetic fluctuations created what Dr. Rodriguez described as information-rich patterns in the electrical field around the monument. Most strikingly, participants at the site, both researchers and visitors, reported unusual subjective experiences. Heightened sensory perception, altered time perception, and what many described as moments of unusual clarity or insight. I've spent my career studying electromagnetic effects on human cognition, explains Dr. Nathaniel Zhao, a neurophysicist who joined the team specifically for the solstice observation. What we recorded matches patterns associated with altered states of consciousness induced by specific frequencies of electromagnetic stimulation. As the anomalous readings subsided and the sun continued its ascent, the research team was left with a mountain of data and a profound question. What exactly had they witnessed? In the days that followed, as they analyzed the collected data, a remarkable hypothesis emerged, one that would fundamentally change our understanding of Stonehenge and potentially of human cognitive history. The monument didn't just measure time, Dr. Vellum explains, her voice steady but her eyes reflecting the magnitude of their discovery. It created a specific kind of experience, a technology for altering human consciousness in a precise, controlled way that's aligned with cosmic cycles. The evidence suggested that Stonehenge functions as what the team came to call a consciousness technology, a system designed to induce specific cognitive states through the combined effects of astronomical alignment, archaeoacoustics, and subtle electromagnetic phenomena. Think of it as a technology that uses natural forces rather than electronics, explains Dr. Zhao. The specific arrangement of stones creates an acoustic chamber. The astronomical alignment positions participants at a specific point in Earth's journey through space. The geological properties of the stones themselves interact with Earth's magnetic field in ways that produce unique electromagnetic signatures. The combined effect, detectable with modern instruments but experienced subjectively by humans, appears to facilitate specific forms of cognition, particularly pattern recognition, holistic thinking, and the perception of connections between seemingly unrelated phenomena. This isn't mysticism, Dr. Yardley insists. It's a sophisticated technology that operates on principles we're only beginning to understand scientifically. The relationship between environmental electromagnetic fields and human neurological function. The countdown, it appeared, wasn't measuring toward a catastrophe or external event, but toward an optimal configuration of natural forces for activating the monument's consciousness-affecting properties. The builders had created a system that would reach peak effectiveness at specific intervals aligned with astronomical cycles, with June 2024 representing a particularly powerful alignment. ARCHAIA's analysis of the collected data revealed that similar but less intense effects likely occur annually at solstices and equinoxes, with major peaks occurring at intervals related to the precession cycle. The 2024 solstice represented a particularly significant peak in this cycle, a moment when multiple astronomical factors aligned to maximize the monument's effects. We're proposing that Stonehenge is essentially a form of natural technology, says Dr. Rodriguez. Not built with microchips and wires, but with precisely positioned stone, earth, and a sophisticated understanding of celestial mechanics, all designed to produce specific effects on human consciousness. The discovery forced a radical reassessment of Neolithic capabilities. The mathematical sophistication required to design such a system implied a level of abstract thinking and astronomical knowledge far beyond what mainstream archaeology had attributed to Stone Age cultures. We've been operating under the assumption that technological progress is linear, notes Dr. Curry, that humans gradually developed more sophisticated tools and knowledge systems over time. But what if some ancient cultures developed different technologies? Ones based on natural principles rather than fabricated materials. This perspective reframed Stonehenge from a primitive calendar or religious site to a sophisticated technology designed for cognitive enhancement, a tool for accessing specific states of consciousness aligned with cosmic cycles. The most profound implication, Dr. Vellum suggests, is that our ancestors possessed forms of knowledge we've lost, mathematical and astronomical understanding embedded in structures rather than texts, transmitted through experience rather than explanation. As this new understanding took shape, the research team faced the challenge of explaining their findings to the scientific community and the public. The evidence was compelling but challenged fundamental assumptions about prehistoric human capabilities. We're not suggesting mystical powers or supernatural phenomena, Dr. Yardley emphasizes. We're proposing that Neolithic people discovered natural principles regarding the relationship between astronomical cycles, Earth energies, and human cognition, principles we're only now rediscovering through advanced technology. The team prepared their findings for peer review, knowing they would face intense scrutiny. Their case rested on multiple lines of evidence: the mathematical patterns identified by ARCHAIA, the acoustic and electromagnetic measurements taken during the solstice, and the documented subjective experiences of participants. In July 2024, their preliminary paper was published in Nature, triggering what Dr. Tanaka describes as the most significant paradigm shift in archaeological thinking since carbon dating. The implications of the Stonehenge discovery extended far beyond archaeology, touching fields from neuroscience to the philosophy of technology. First came the archaeological reassessment. If Stonehenge represented a sophisticated consciousness technology, other Neolithic monuments required re-examination. ARCHAIA began analyzing data from sites worldwide, finding similar, though less complex, patterns at monuments from Newgrange in Ireland to Göbekli Tepe in Turkey. We're seeing evidence of a shared knowledge system that spanned continents and millennia, explains Dr. Omar Farouk, an archaeologist specializing in comparative monument studies. These structures aren't just similar in appearance. They encode similar mathematical principles relating to astronomy and consciousness. This suggested a prehistoric knowledge tradition focused on the relationship between cosmic cycles and human cognition, a tradition largely lost to modern understanding until ARCHAIA's analysis brought it to light. The neurological implications proved equally profound. Dr. Zhao led studies measuring the brain activity of volunteers at Stonehenge during various astronomical alignments, documenting patterns associated with heightened creativity, pattern recognition, and holistic thinking. The effects are subtle but measurable, he explains. We're seeing increased coherence between brain regions, particularly those involved in integrating diverse types of information. It's similar to patterns observed in experienced meditators, but induced by environmental factors rather than mental techniques. This suggested an entirely new approach to cognitive enhancement, one based on aligning human neurological patterns with natural environmental rhythms and forces. Technological implications emerged as engineers considered the principles behind Stonehenge's design. We've been building technologies that shield us from natural electromagnetic fields, notes Dr. Cassandra Wright, a bioelectromagnetics researcher. But these monuments suggest another approach, technologies that strategically interact with these fields to produce beneficial cognitive effects. Several research teams began developing what they called neuroharmonic technologies, devices designed to create beneficial interactions between human neurological function and natural electromagnetic patterns. Early applications focused on treating conditions like seasonal affective disorder and certain forms of chronic pain. The philosophical implications proved perhaps the most challenging to integrate. The discovery suggested that technological progress might not be linear but cyclical, with knowledge gained, lost, and rediscovered throughout human history. We've defined technology too narrowly, argues Dr. Isaiah Thompson, a philosopher of technology who joined the research initiative. We've assumed that advanced technology must look like our technology, electronic, manufactured, distinct from nature. But Stonehenge represents a different technological paradigm, one that works with natural principles rather than attempting to overcome them. This perspective challenged the narrative of continual progress that underlies much of modern thinking. If Neolithic humans possessed sophisticated knowledge that was subsequently lost, what other valuable understandings might have disappeared throughout history? Educational implications followed as universities began developing interdisciplinary programs exploring what Dr. Vellum termed cognitive archaeology, the study of how past cultures understood and influenced human consciousness. We're finding evidence that many ancient monuments weren't just places to observe or worship, she explains. They were technologies for knowing, tools designed to enhance specific cognitive capacities aligned with celestial cycles. This framework helped explain why many ancient cultures invested enormous resources in astronomical alignments and precise architecture. They weren't merely tracking time but creating technologies for enhanced cognition tied to cosmic rhythms. Environmental implications emerged as researchers documented how the effectiveness of these monuments depends on their geographical context. These structures work because of their specific placement in the landscape, explains environmental scientist Dr. Rebecca Tanner. They interact with local geological features, magnetic field patterns, and acoustic properties of the surrounding terrain. This suggested a form of technology deeply embedded in its environment rather than imposed upon it, a model increasingly relevant as modern societies confront the environmental impacts of conventional technological development. Medical researchers began exploring therapeutic applications, particularly for neurological conditions. Early studies indicated that exposure to specific electromagnetic patterns like those at Stonehenge during astronomical alignments could beneficially affect conditions ranging from chronic pain to certain mood disorders. We're not suggesting these monuments can replace modern medicine, cautions Dr. Elena Vasquez, a neuropsychiatrist conducting pilot studies. But they represent a complementary approach based on harmonizing neural activity with natural electromagnetic patterns. Perhaps most profoundly, the Stonehenge discovery challenged fundamental assumptions about human consciousness itself. If specific states of awareness can be facilitated by alignment with cosmic cycles, this suggests consciousness might not be solely an internal phenomenon but a process that emerges from the interaction between human neurophysiology and the wider environment. We've been thinking about consciousness as something contained within the brain, notes Dr. Thompson. But these monuments suggest a more distributed model, consciousness as a process that spans the individual and their environmental context, including cosmic rhythms. This perspective aligned with emerging theories in consciousness studies that challenge strictly materialist models, suggesting instead that awareness emerges from complex interactions between organisms and their wider contexts. As 2024 progressed, the implications continued to unfold. The discovery hadn't just changed our understanding of Stonehenge. It had opened new ways of thinking about technology, consciousness, and humanity's relationship with natural cycles. What's most remarkable, reflects Dr. Yardley, is that this knowledge was encoded in plain sight for thousands of years. We just lacked the computational tools and conceptual framework to recognize it. This observation raised uncomfortable questions about other forms of knowledge modern civilization might be overlooking. Insights encoded in traditional practices, indigenous knowledge systems, or even the structure of ancient monuments still waiting to be fully understood. The countdown hadn't ended with the solstice. In many ways, it had just begun. a countdown to a new understanding of human history and potential that continues to unfold as researchers worldwide build upon the initial discovery. 1 year after the solstice alignment, the research team gathered at Stonehenge for a retrospective assessment. The monument stood as it had for millennia, massive stones silhouetted against the summer sky, seemingly unchanged by the revolutionary discoveries made about its purpose. Perhaps the most profound lesson reflects Dr. Vellum as sunset paints the ancient stones in golden light, is about how knowledge persists. The builders of Stonehenge couldn't write down their discoveries about consciousness and cosmic cycles, or if they did, those writings haven't survived. Instead, they encoded their understanding in stone and earth and astronomical alignment, creating a knowledge system that could survive millennia of cultural change. This strategy proved remarkably successful. While written traditions were lost, languages forgotten, and empires rose and fell, the stone circle continued its silent calculation, waiting for humanity to redevelop the conceptual framework necessary to understand its message. In many ways, Dr. Yardley adds, ARCHAIA functioned as a translation tool, bridging the cognitive gap between our time and theirs, decoding a mathematical and astronomical language embedded in the landscape. What began as a countdown has transformed into an ongoing dialogue between past and present, between different ways of knowing, between human consciousness and cosmic cycles. The stones, having delivered their message after 5,000 years of patient calculation, continue their vigil on Salisbury Plain, perhaps holding further insights still waiting to be discovered. As modern civilization faces unprecedented challenges, environmental degradation, information overload, fragmented attention, the ancient technology of Stonehenge offers a compelling alternative vision. Knowledge aligned with natural cycles, technology that enhances rather than disrupts cognitive integration, and a perspective that situates human consciousness within the larger rhythms of the cosmos. The countdown wasn't to an ending, concludes Dr. Vellum, watching the first stars appear above the ancient circle, but to a beginning, a rediscovery of ways of knowing that our ancestors understood but we had forgotten, reminding us that human ingenuity spans not just space but time, connecting us across millennia through the universal languages of mathematics, astronomy, and the shared experience of consciousness itself. The stones of Stonehenge stand silent in the gathering twilight, their message delivered after 5,000 years. Not a warning of catastrophe, but an invitation to remember that we exist within cycles larger than ourselves, and that perhaps true wisdom lies not in transcending these patterns, but in aligning more consciously with them. In the space between ancient stones and modern minds, a new understanding continues to unfold, one that bridges the artificial divide between technology and nature, between rational analysis and embodied experience, between the individual consciousness and the cosmic patterns that shape all life on Earth. Human awareness, like the stones of Stonehenge, exists at the intersection of earth and sky, grounded in material reality, yet aligned with celestial movements that connect us to something larger than ourselves. Human understanding advances not in a straight line but in a spiral, returning to forgotten insights with new perspectives, discovering that what appears primitive may contain profound sophistication when viewed through a different lens. The stones have spoken across time, and in listening, we've discovered not just their message but something essential about ourselves. Beings capable of encoding understanding in forms that outlast empires, creating technologies that work with natural patterns rather than against them, and finding meaning in the alignment between consciousness and cosmos that transcends the boundaries of any single culture or era. The true revelation of Stonehenge isn't just what our ancestors knew, but what we might yet become if we remember to listen to the stone and stars.